Welcome to the Boardroom. I'm Ros Gold-Onwude, and today I am here with Lloyd Pierce, head coach of the Atlanta Hawks. What's up, Lloyd?
What's up, Roz? How are you?
I'm well. It's great to see you. Actually, officially, we can call this my first interview of you as a head coach. Yes?
That means I finally made it.
No, but I've really enjoyed watching your rise from many years of hard work on the sidelines as an assistant coach to now getting your first opportunity as a head coach with the Atlanta Hawks. And you've got 2 seasons under your belt now. You've got some experience, but you're also still growing as a coach, I'm sure. What are some early lessons you learned about how to be most effective for your team?
Well, I think it's all kind of, they all tie in together. Being an assistant, being a head coach, it still comes down to the relationships you have with the players. And so the relationship shift and the dynamic of that changes a little bit as a head coach, because it isn't that personal connection and bond. I'm not on the court with the guys as much. And so there are more conversations that the head coach has to have with the individual players, big picture, short term, and personal, emotional. You kind of carry that weight as a head coach. You carry that burden of all things. And so that shift in communication and how you communicate with the players is the biggest difference. And learning that, you just do it on the fly. It's not the same, to the full extent. As an assistant coach, you normally work with three or four players. And so you have a different dynamic. You can get closer to the guys. Me, I have to be able to manage and deal with and connect with all 15 of our guys.
There are plenty of guys in this league who make entire careers out of being assistant coaches, and very respectable careers. Their whole career in the NBA, they were an assistant coach, and they maybe moved around different staffs. You had a very beautiful assistant coaching career and then finally got your shot. But what do you think were separators that allowed you to move out of that assistant coaching role into one of the few 30 head coach roles?
Timing, opportunity, connections, relationships. I get that question a lot, and it's not as if I'm separated from every other assistant coach or I did something specific. Travis and I had a relationship from our time working in Golden State, and it was a very brief stint in Golden State. And Travis understood that, where the direction of the Atlanta Hawks was going at the time. He was looking specifically for a head coach that could come in and work with young players and build the culture of the organization, and has that kind of background. And so that was the focus of his interview and his search. And so a lot of the candidates that he interviewed, we were all assistants. Most of us were all assistants. I think 2 or 3 had some head coaching experience, but he was really in tune with where we needed to be in these first couple of years and connecting with our guys and establishing a culture. And so the timing and opportunity of that, I thought was fell into my lap. And then just, you go through the interview process and you have to do what you do. And for me, it was just trying to be as authentic and as real as I could be.
Now, for your team, you're looking at an NBA that's trying to resume their season within a bubble of sorts, and not all the teams will be invited, and the Hawks will be on the outskirts looking in. They will not get a chance to go to Orlando, to which I've read you're not really thrilled about. So what are the pros and cons to you of being left out of the bubble?
Well, I'm not thrilled in the sense that our guys need to play basketball. We understand that this is a very unprecedented opportunity and time in our lives of having to shut down our season, cut it short. We didn't get to finish the last 15 games. But more importantly, we haven't been able to play basketball. We just started going in the gym and getting shots up over the last month, but it's in a very limited capacity. And then since we're not going to Orlando, it takes away that opportunity that we've had to really continue growing. And basketball experience for us is extremely important. When you have a young team, needing to play basketball is extremely important. So disappointed primarily from that aspect. I get where we are in our society and as a league, and I understand not everything is going to be fulfilled in terms of this season.
Mhm.
So I do, there's no gripes about, hey, we're not going to Orlando. It's the worst thing that ever happened. I think it's a difficult situation to resume in Orlando and hope that it does successfully. What we're trying to do now is give ourselves an opportunity to have our guys come back to Atlanta, work out together as a team, get player development, get stronger, and even get some scrimmages against some of the other teams just so we can play and compete against NBA players, because there's no open gyms. There's nothing we can do that we feel is safe than what we can provide, and that's what we're trying to do right now.
Players right now that are discussing making sure that the resume of the season doesn't just make the rest of America forget about all of the racial unrest, inequality, police brutality happening right now. And they don't want to be a distraction from that. So they're having discussions, the players themselves. But from your point of view, what do you think the league, the NBA, can do to make an effort that doesn't seem superficial or like a performance, and that would actually be meaningful to you as they resume basketball?
Well, it can't seem superficial it can't be superficial if it's not. If it's real and it's authentic and it's genuine and it's sustainable, then it won't be superficial. If we just do something through July, August, and September and we forget about it, then it is superficial. And so, you know, we've known as athletes and as a professional sports organization and league, we know what our platform and how our platform reaches millions and billions in different countries. But more importantly, we know in our country how far that reach goes and to where to whom's the homes it goes into, and who you're reaching. You're reaching white and black kids. You're reaching families. You're reaching corporations. You're reaching universities. And so the best opportunity we have as an organization, as a league, is to use our platform to address the social justice issues that are going on in our country, to address Black Lives Matter, to address racism. When we don't have that platform and when we don't have that reach, we don't have an opportunity to fulfill that. I understand, there's other ways of doing it as well. But just as we can bring in millions as a fan base to our games and to television, we can also use that same opportunity to talk about racism, to talk about history and African-American history here in the country in the United States, and really tell the story that we want to tell and have the right people to partner with to tell that story and keep the conversation alive so we can make an impact change.
Yeah, I love what you said about for the league's effort, whatever they come up with, for it not to feel kind of performance like. It shouldn't just be for the 3 months this summer that that the season resumes. There should be something long-standing. There should be some real commitment and investment. Perhaps one could also look at how the league is built, maybe with more Black coaches, GMs, presidents, and seeing more of that within the leadership structure of the NBA. Let me not put words into your mouth. Do you think the league is on track with doing a good job here?
Well, I think everybody's planning and plotting right now. It's Killer Mike's words, plan, plot, strategize, mobilize. I think we're all kind of in that phase. And, you can't quantify if you're doing a good job just by the last 3 weeks or the last month. I think the first thing we all have to do is we have to self-reflect, and we have to look in the mirror as individuals. And I think, when you say that, you talk about racism and you talk about African Americans and you talk about what's going on in our country and the history of what's happened for over 450 years, you have to self-reflect and see, where you are in that education. And so as an organization, we have to do that here in Atlanta, and every other organization has to do that. And how diverse is your staff? What are we doing in our communities? How are we investing in our communities? Are we trying to diversify our city, not just in the workforce, but just in the education? And so I think this is the time when we self-reflect and we focus on the problem and addressing the problem. It's hard to have a conversation about racism at work, but we need to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to quantify because we have 8 Black coaches in the NBA as progress. I think progress is what we do as an organization to impact our entire city, and what we do as management and executives and leadership roles to address this issue. That's the most important thing. Not just we've got 10 coaches now from 8 2 years ago. I don't know if that really addressed anything.
Do the Black coaches in the NBA kind of look out for each other?
I can't speak for the Black coaches. I will say, the assistant coaches and that I've kind of grew up with in the NBA, Jamal Mosley, Dave Fizdale, Dave Vanderpool, J.B. Bickerstaff, J.J. Outlaw, Johnny Bryant, John Bryant, Marlon Garnett. We all kind of grew up doing the same deal, moving up the assistant coaches ranking. Dave Fizdale has been a head coach twice. JB is currently a head coach. Vanderpool's an associate head coach. And so we kind of look out for each other. We're all similar age. Some of us played against each other in college. Some of us started out in the league together. And so you naturally form your own bonds. But to me, I think what we try and do and what we've done, and we keep our text messages going, and we have a thread, and there's a lot of nonsense that we talk about, and then there's a lot of stuff where we're educating and trying to help each other as well.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I remember speaking with JB Bickerstaff, head coach of the Cavs now, super happy for his opportunity coming again, and he once told me that there was kind of a group chat for a lot of the guys kind of coming up.
I'll say 80% of the time it's nonsense. So
maybe he oversold it as this big, but it's still community, and I'm sure within there are moments of brotherhood and looking out for each other. And it's an odd question for me to pose to you for a league.
Let me stop you there, because what you just said is this community. And the beauty of what we do is when we need to speak about something, or when there's something someone has an issue on, they know exactly where to go, because there's trust in our group. When we talk, and 80% of the time it's just BS and just messing with each other. But when there is something of urgency or need, we know where to go, and that's because there's that trust in the group. It's the same thing we're fighting for right now. When we talk about leadership in our communities, how do we build up, how do we keep the conversation of racism alive? Self-reflecting means we have to tackle it head on. We have to be able to have these conversations within our organizations, amongst our family and our friends, and then out into our communities. We can't come up with solutions and we haven't even addressed the problem. And so we need to build up our communities first. And that's a big charge at all of the head coaches, and what we've been doing so far is how do we build up our communities to where we can get some trust. So now when something actually comes up, it's not like it's the end of the world. It's now they can become one-off incidents, not this is a systemic problem, because right now it's a systemic problem.
Right. And so just coming back to the NBA and perhaps any systemic racial issues as far as getting Black people into leadership, into coaching, into president roles, into GM roles, it's odd for me to ask you because you're a Black man coaching in a league that's predominantly Black, but do you feel like you're supported enough as a Black coach? And better question, do you feel like you need extra support as a Black coach in the NBA?
To do my job, maybe. I think all coaches feel they feel like they could have more support. Job security in professional sports is what we're all seeking, because like I'm in a development situation. We're the youngest team in the NBA. It's not going to happen overnight. I know that. And so I do call for the support of, letting me grow, letting me grow with these guys, letting me help these guys grow. But it is a results-oriented business. So the two don't quite match, need growth, need results. That doesn't go well together when you have a young team. And so that is support. You do need support in that. You need support, and you need to be aligned with the task of from the owner to the general manager to the coach to the players to the fans. Like everyone needs to be aligned on where you are. But to your question, it's hard to just pinpoint our league, but I'll try and focus there. There's only one Black majority owner in the NBA, and that's Michael Jordan. so yeah, there is a disconnect when you talk about how do you get more African American coaches, how do you get more African American GMs, how do you get more African American CEOs of NBA organizations. Well, when you go to the top, it is dominant white men that own the NBA teams, and so how does that change? Well, that's not just an NBA problem. I mean, go through NFL and go through MLB and go to Disney and go to ESPN and go to radio stations and go to anything else, and it's going to be white men that are in these leadership positions. And so, um, how do we get there? Well, we have to address the original problem, and I keep coming back to that because it's the access or it's the lack thereof for African Americans to be able to get into those positions. And so, um, that's just the long, hard fight that we have to continually push. But part of it is having African American coaches and seeing them succeed and wishing for them to succeed and putting them in elevated positions throughout the organization, so everyone has the opportunity.
Now, it wasn't just players that came together and discussed the issues facing America right now around racial injustice, inequality, police brutality, voter suppression. It was also coaches. So you guys all recently came together as coaches and had a video call to discuss what's at hand. What were the key takeaways of what coaches can do within their power with their teams to handle this situation and meet the moment appropriately?
Well, I think the first step was to address it head on and realize that all 30 of us have been called to leadership roles, and now that leadership has transitioned to off the court, and right now we've been away from the game anyways, but this issue that's going on in our country, in our world, is calling for us to be leaders off the court. And I think the biggest thing now is to be educated. What is going on? For a lot of people, myself included, this is a lot deeper. This isn't the stuff that we've been taught in classrooms. This is the stuff that historians know about, and how it became a systemic issue, and then how it became a social issue, and how it became an economic issue, and how it became a health issue. But we have to be educated because we deal with 75% African Americans in our league, and we're trying to do that. We're trying to partner up with local organizations that are addressing these issues. We're trying to partner up with national organizations that are addressing these issues. We're trying to get educated on what we can do with our platform, and that's kind of where we are right now. We have some ideas of where we can move forward as a group, but it's still about being educated and being guided properly. So like we said earlier, what we do is sustainable and lasting, and not just for the right now.
How are coaches working together to educate themselves on these topics?
So I think it's kind of been an ongoing process. Obviously, when we started the coaches meetings, we decided we needed a subcommittee, and the subcommittee was formed. I think it's 9 members, and the 9 members include myself, Coach Pop, Coach Kerr, Stan Van Gundy, Dave Fizdale, JB Bickerstaff, Quinn Snyder, and Brett Brown. And it's really just to, kind of tighten up the information we're receiving, the ideas that we have, and really get to a focal point that we think is attainable and powerful and lasting for all the coaches. And so we represent the coaches. We meet. We've had 3 full head coaches meeting, and I think we've had 5 committee meetings in 2.5, almost 3 weeks. So it's been powerful. It's been constant. We have our email chain, and we have our text message thread that goes on with the committee, and it's nonstop information. Everybody's got an article, everybody's got a TED talk, everybody's got a statement, an idea, and it just gets passed and back and forth over the text exchange. And it's really encouraging to see it. Just, you're seeing the passion that every coach is sharing and having during this time, and they're all committed to not only helping their local markets, but really addressing an issue with our platform has been the focus. And so I'm encouraged by our group. I'm encouraged by our association, and really look forward to what we can do moving forward.
I'm really excited and want to focus in on the educational aspect of this subcommittee. So you guys are reading books. Are you sharing books? Are you assigning
Yeah,
them?
I mean, it's any and everything. You know, white fragility was passed on to me, and I went through that in 2 days. You know, I recommended Nobody by Mark Lamont Hill, who's a personal friend of mine, and he wrote about this, you know, during the Eric Garner, Mike Brown era of police brutality and the systemic side of it. And so we're passing around so much information and articles and books. But, you
Is
know,
it an assignment though? Or is it like
not necessarily an assignment. It's just more of here's what I found. You guys should read up on this kind of thing. Video clips have been passed around, just powerful things. And I think that the goal is to keep it relevant. And I think sometimes we look at these incidents and we say, man, that was tough what happened in Minneapolis. And then you kind of go about life and you move on. And when we share these articles and these situations, we see how often these issues are occurring in our country. And we realize it's not a one-off, it's not a random incident. There's something structurally and system-wise, it's completely an issue that we're probably realizing more so than we thought, or we haven't paid enough attention to. And right now we are. From an education standpoint, and we go back to the origin of African-American history and oppression, you know, Brian Stevenson from the Equal Justice Initiative and the movie that everybody knows, Just Mercy, you know, the movie was written about his life. He's I don't really know the technical term, but he's agreed to partner and help us and really guide us. And you know, he gave a powerful presentation to our group last Tuesday, lasted about an hour and 40 minutes. And, you know, I felt like I was in a master's class of African-American history in 1 hour and 40 minutes. And he crammed in as much as he could, and it was powerful. And so, you know, that's also part of our education is finding and partnering with the people that have done this for their entire lives and have been in the movement for a long time and helping steer us so that we don't get distracted and move too far walking down paths that people have already walked down.
right? So once the coaches get to a point of education, how do you think they should interact and enable and empower and guide the young men that they coach, you know, these players through this moment?
It's conversation. As we're being educated, it's important it's important for me. We had a Zoom call last night with our team to let them know what I'm doing, what I'm learning, and kind of what the next steps are, but also to encourage them to learn and to be educated on what's going on. Because the one thing we know always happens is we have a mic in our face. You know, before games, after games, social media, we have a platform, and it's going to be brought up. It's not going away. And so we have to educate our players on how to use their platforms, and then also to have the open dialogue about how they feel, how they may feel, how it's affecting their family, their friends, having tough conversations that they probably never have had before. You know, I had 8 players march and protest with me downtown in Atlanta this morning, which is the first for a lot of them. And it was great to see, but this is the maturation process that some of these guys are going through.
Right. I mean, you've got a team, you're a young Black coach. You've got a group of young majority Black guys, a very young team, and you're in Atlanta. And so you all were marching together. You marched with the NAACP and the March of Georgia rally.
March on Georgia.
Yep. And I was actually seeing some of the clips coming out of that, and I thought, boy, talk about sports crossing the lines into being able to give back into the communities that they exist in. Like for you, you're in Atlanta, and I feel like every time there's an election, we hear about voter suppression issues. And so you were discussing briefly, if you could break down how the Hawks can help their fan base, help their community that they exist in, deal with voter suppression at elections, and where does that space of sports and then community and voting and politics intersect? How do you navigate that?
Well, it's not easy. That's what I have learned. You know, seeing Stacey Abrams a few years back lose the governor's race to voter suppression, and really has been a champion for fighting on opposing the current voter election issues that are at the Senate level. Part of that rally was to address that. Senate Bill 463 was to, oppose the voting election issues that they've been having that restrict our community, the Fulton County and DeKalb County areas that have had these issues for the past couple of years. It's restricting them the opportunity to vote. And so when our players and our organization and our city understands that, and we're called to action of how we can improve something that is obviously and drastically affecting our community, we're committed to doing what we can to build up trust in our community. And this is the most pressing issue that we can deal with is voting. We're trying to throw out the idea of having a voting poll at the arena. We're trying to throw out the idea of being a part of finding more volunteers and more technicians and getting more people signed up to vote in our city. And then also obviously getting them down to the polls and educating them on, who and what options are out there when it's time to vote. A lot of these things, everyone thinks it's just the president. It's our local, it's our state, it's our government officials that really impact change, especially here in the state of Georgia. So being educated on that and getting to the polls is extremely important. And we're just trying to do our part in learning how we may be able to do our part in helping assist and get rid of the voter suppression here.
Amazing. And I'm seeing more and more athletes use their platform and power to try and help with voter suppression around elections. So that would be very exciting to see that come to life. Now, lastly here, I also saw the Hawks have made Juneteenth a permanent paid holiday. And for those who don't know, Juneteenth is widely understood as a celebration of the end of slavery. And I'm curious, what did Juneteenth mean to you? How aware of it were you as a kid and an adult growing up? And then what will this Juneteenth of 2020 mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in San Jose, and, it's kind of one of the big events in the summer as a kid was going downtown and being a part of the Juneteenth festival and slowly being educated on the history of African Americans in our country, to an extent, I guess, as you want to put it. Obviously there's more truth behind slavery and the reality of slavery, but I think the understanding that there was something to celebrate for African Americans and being brought over to the country, knowing that as a kid and being able to celebrate that was important. It was always important to take part in the Juneteenth celebrations in San Jose. I think it's, understanding that we have a real issue in addressing our history now, and to see Juneteenth actually kind of come back to the forefront so people are starting to learn a little bit more about African American history is a step. It's a necessary step, and it's important. And I'm glad the Hawks have done that. I'm glad they've, participated, as many other organizations and corporations have done, in acknowledging Juneteenth and the significance of Juneteenth and the celebration, and then, furthering that conversation and moving forward. But it's a step. It's a big step for us.
Absolutely. And, we'll take that step, and, they continue to add up. Lloyd, it's been a
small
pleasure.
Victories. We need every small victory we can.
I'm telling you. Well, I'm counting this as a small victory, or actually, it was a pleasure to chat with you and pick your mind. I'm proud of how you're stepping up, during this time for yourself, for your community, for your team, and for all of us around the NBA. So I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me on. I finally made it.